Welcome to State of the State. I'm John Calavali, hosting this special musical production. Our guests are Dennis Pratt, Susan Curzio, and Mike Marks. They will perform, and I will chat with them intermittently. Dennis Pratt has been a guest on State of the State. He has performed on State of the State with the Aristocats, a Rhode Island jazz, swing, Dixieland band, and he has been interviewed. This evening, Dennis, you're doing both. You're right. Performing and you're being interviewed as an author. Dennis has a new book, Bass Duets in Various Styles, and this will be the focus of our musical performance tonight. Dennis has been arranging bass duets for a very long time. He is a bassist and music teacher. Dennis has been playing these duets with his longtime friend and bassist, John Curzio. John and Dennis appear on the cover of this new book. Dennis, you have been playing bass duets for many years. What prompted you to put together this compilation of arrangements of bass duets in various styles?
Well, first off, there aren't too many books that have bass duets, especially geared for different styles and all that kind of thing. A lot of it is for bowing and so forth. The emphasis on this book is pizzicato. And John Curzio and I have been longtime friends ever since our Berkeley days. And he lives close by, and we started playing these different duets. And I've composed about and arranged about 128 of them now.
And there are 35 of them in this book?
There are 35 in this book, which includes a play-along.
Yes, it includes a CD with a MP3 file for each of the 35 songs. We're going to come back to that. Dennis, I'm going to ask you to introduce the first bass duet, who you will be playing with Mike Marks.
Correct. Our first duet is called Dido's Lament, and it goes back to the 16th century. The interesting thing about this is that it was written by a German who was living in England, and it's really a takeoff of an Italian tune. So we're going to perform that right now.
and then I'll go back to Dennis. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be playing a bass duet with Dennis Pratt.
I've known Dennis for quite a few years now. Started out with my grandson getting me involved with the bass as a way of staying active in my retirement. I was looking for a place to go and something to do to keep the mind sharp as a tack, as you've noticed. So I ended up playing with Dennis, and he's taught me a whole bunch of things. He's got the patience of a saint, and we'll just go from there and say that.
Well, excellent. Thank you. You know what they say about music? It keeps the brain sharp. And there is data to support that very generalized statement. So thank you very much. Dennis, I'm going to come back to you and talk a little bit about your book, Bass Duets. Tell us a little bit about the form of playing on the bass these duets were designed for, and a few other things that are important here.
Well, this book, the duets are based and composed for acoustic bass without necessarily bowing. They can be bowed, but this is primarily for pizzicato. It's not for beginners. It's for knowledgeable bass players who can play in what we call the thumb position, up high on the bass. They're categorized from easy to difficult, and there's all different kinds of styles in this
And
book.
those styles are such as?
Such as, there's ragtime, which you're going to hear one tonight. There's classical, there's jazz, there's Argentine tango, there's marches, blues, bossa nova, movie themes. It goes on and on. Waltzes, patriotic tunes. There's a little bit of everything in this book.
That's well done, Dennis. Thank you so much. Susan Curzio is going to be your next play along. So we're going to give Susan time to make an adjustment in her upright bass, and then you can introduce the song when she's ready, okay?
Our next selection is called African Flower. It's written by Duke Ellington. It's one of his lesser known pieces of music, and it's called, once again, African Flower. Behind the top, above. Okay. There you go. 1, 2, 3, go.
Stay put, Susan, because I'm going to be interviewing you next.
Okay.
This is Susan Curzio. She is the daughter of the gentleman who appears with Dennis on the cover of his new book, Bass Duets. So, Susan,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about yourself
Okay.
and how you came to be playing on this occasion with Dennis.
Okay. Well, as you know, my dad is John Curzio, who they go way back to the 60s, their Berkeley days. I started playing bass when I was in middle school. My middle school teacher found out my dad was a bass player and said, well, here's a bass. You can play.
Automatically.
Yep. So I started playing then and continued. I went to URI and studied. And now I teach music as well in North Kingstown for beginning instrumentalists in the elementary level. And I thoroughly enjoy it, and I play as much as I can, balancing that with family and work.
Of course.
And I am lucky to be able to fill in for my dad today, who was unable to be here.
Yes.
So yeah, that's it. This is my first engagement with Dennis, and it's been a blast. We bassists don't get to commingle much together in the jazz sphere anyway.
Well,
so it's nice
bass
to play
duets
together.
are not common,
common.
like
Nope.
piano duets.
Correct.
And saxophone duets.
Right.
And guitar duets.
Right.
So this is not seen very often.
Precisely.
That's why we're doing this program, because it's something different.
Yes,
And
definitely.
this could certainly be part of a larger band performance, orchestral performance. As often we see a guitar solo, a drum solo, a clarinet solo within a performance.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, you're going to stay put.
Yes.
And Dennis, I'm going to ask you to introduce the next bass duet, again with Susan Curzio.
I'd just like to mention, I want to thank Susan for coming in and performing, because her father is not feeling well, and she's doing a great job playing, and I'm very impressed with her playing. He has bragged about her for many years, but we've never got a chance to play together, so this is fun. But our next selection is a movie theme, and it goes back to the 1950s, a movie called Baby Doll, and this is the theme.
And Dennis, so I have this right, that was Baby Doll?
That was called Baby Doll, and its theme music. Dmitri Tiomkin was a famous Hollywood composer, and he wrote the theme for Baby Doll. I'm not sure who starred in it, but it is a movie that was in the 1950s.
Okay, so our next performance will be what?
Good question. Looking on our thing here,
Leaf Rag?
Maple Leaf Rag, a little bit of ragtime. One, two, three, four.
Thank you, folks. Dennis, we're going to talk a little bit about the item that complements this book, and that's the CD with the MP3 musical files on it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it has both tracks, so you can either play with both tracks or one or the other tracks. And I want to compliment and congratulate my son, Chris, and the Pilgrim High School for helping to develop the CD. You do have to play it on the computer.
Yes, indeed. This is really a helpful teaching tool, Dennis. You have been using it with your students. Mike is one of them.
Of course, yes.
And I suspect that Susan Curzio may be using it as well.
Well, I hope she uses it for her students in the future.
So I think that we are going to hear your last performance, which is?
Navy Hymn, the Navy Hymn. This is a patriotic hymn written in the 1800s, and the Navy has adapted this and we're going to call it the Navy Hymn.
Okay. Dennis, we have a little extra time. Do you have perhaps another duet that you could play?
Actually, we don't have any of them ready.
Okay, well, we won't do that.
We can talk a little bit more
Yeah.
about it.
Let's talk a little bit more about the book, what's in it. We should point out, Dennis, that when you open this book, you see sheet music,
That's correct.
and there's sheet music for each of the 35 duets. And we said before, and the title says, they're in various styles of music. And so those styles of music include what?
Well, there's classical, there's ragtime, and as I mentioned before, Argentine tango, marches, blues, bossa nova, seasonal songs, movie themes, waltzes. There's a whole variation of a lot of different things. Couple other things. As far as being able to play this music, you do have to have expertise in what we call thumb position. And thumb position, if I can demonstrate this while we have a little bit of time,
Of course.
is when you go up and use your first and second finger primarily up in the higher range. So bass players have to have a little bit of knowledge to be able to play these duets using thumb position. You can bow them, but they're not designed for bowing. You can try bowing them. I didn't design them to use the bow, although that's possible. What else is there? On the CD, you can play one of the lines and hear the other while you're playing it, or vice versa, or you can hear both of them at the same time. So I think it's a really nice book for the acoustic bass players in particular. And Sue, yep.
If I may interject, Dennis has done a wonderful job. Arranging bass duets or quartets or whatever is a very difficult thing because of the range of the instrument. Things can tend to get very muddy. The sound, it doesn't necessarily ring out. But I think Dennis has done a really wonderful job in making sure that the two bassists complement one another instead of stepping on one another's range. He separates them nicely, and they swap melodies very well between the two parts. And I just think that it's been very well done from what I've seen so far. I'm excited to look through it again.
It's interesting that you're making that comment, Susan. I'll tell you why. My son, among other things, plays upright bass.
Yes.
And he basically had the same comment when he first saw this and listened to a couple of them.
Yeah.
And he said, wow, that is some arranging. How did he manage it?
Well, you definitely, your bass is playing in the low range, so you have to avoid what they call the low interval limits, and that is a problem sometimes. And that's why, as I mentioned before, the upper part usually has to play a lot in the thumb position up high to stay away from the muddiness that can happen between two bass players.
Okay, Dennis and Susan, we still have a few minutes remaining, 5 to be exact. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to decide on playing one that you've already played, so that we'll have a little bit more music, and then I will close the show officially after that.
Okay.
So the two of you decide amongst yourselves,
All right.
and then go for it.
Man.
Okay, they're going to play African Flower as it is written in the book.
I mention one more thing. We had done abbreviated versions of this, so the actual duets are longer. We have abbreviated them so that we could do a lot of them for this show. But now we're going to do more or less the whole edition of African Flower.
Mike, please come a little bit closer because we're going to end and we want you in the shot. Dennis Pratt, thank you.
Thank you for having us, John.
You're quite welcome. Susan Grzil, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You as well.
I know Mike. Mike, thank you for being here. Mike Marks, Susan Curzio, Dennis Pratt. You've been watching State of the State, and please join us again next time for the next edition of State of the State.